I'm David Valent, Coordinator of IATEFL Young Learners and Teenagers Special Interest Group, and I'd like to warmly welcome you all to the 2019 Annual YLTSIG Web Conference. I'm thrilled to introduce the opening plenary speaker for Day 2 of our event, Carol Reid. Carol has many years' experience in ELT and specialises in early years and primary language education. Carol's award-winning titles include Bugs, 500 Activities for the Primary Classroom, and Tiger. Her latest publication is a preschool course, Mimi's Wheel. Carol is a former president of IATEFL, and to find out more, please visit Carol's website, carolreid.com. And without any further ado, over to you, Carol.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for that lovely introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's here. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout on a Saturday. That's fantastic. And what we're going to be looking at in this webinar is what is meant by a whole child approach in an ELT context. And what I'd like to do is unpack the word whole as an acronym for 5 key ingredients. And I'll also be suggesting practical ideas and activities which integrate a focus on the whole child with learning English in a holistic and engaging way. But the first thing I'd like to do, as I know that we have a lot of collective expertise in this room, is actually to move over to you and to ask you, what do you think? What is a whole child approach? I'm not looking for a definition, but if you could just, pop into the chat box any words that come into your head that you associate with a whole child approach, and let's see if we can build up a picture of our collective understanding. So would you like to go with that in the chat box? I'm looking for your ideas. The chat history's been cleared. Great. Ensure it's safe. Fantastic. That's a very, very important basic thing. What else in a whole child approach? Other ideas? Every aspect of their personality and learning journey. That's a wonderful way of putting it. Thank you, Rebecca. The cognitive, emotional, social, physical, multiple intelligences. Yes, children feel safe and supported, encouragement, pay attention to their emotions, absolutely develop a range of skills with some lovely, lovely responses coming in here. Well, we can perhaps stop the webinar straight away, as you all clearly have a lovely understanding of what a whole child approach is. And that's an absolutely fantastic way to start this webinar, because I think seeing from your responses there that we very much share an understanding that a whole child approach involves focusing on all aspects of children's development. So the social, the emotional, the psychological, the physical, the creative, the cognitive, and the language. And that while we are simultaneously working towards academic objectives and preparing children for primary school. But I think the really important thing to underline here is that language is just one aspect of children's development, and we need to work towards this in a way that's fully integrated with other aspects. And in a way, there's a paradox, because by taking a whole approach, or if you like, a global approach, and attending to all the developmental needs of the whole child, children actually learn much more English than they do if we insist on a much more narrowly focused, language-driven approach. So in other words, if we just hammer away at language, we're not likely to be so successful in our job as language teachers than if we actually focus on all the aspects of children's development. Let's just have a look at an example of a typical classroom activity that kind of exemplifies this. So I'm sure I've chosen a song that I'm sure a lot of you will know, the traditional song, Five Little Ducks. And you can join in with this in your computers at home if you're with other people. If you're on your own and people are walking by, they may think you're mad, but never mind. So the song and the actions, I'm going to have to bring my hand up so you can see them a bit more. Okay, so we go, 5 little ducks go swimming one day over the pond and far away. Mummy duck goes quack, 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 but only 4 little ducks come back. And then so on again with the ducks over the pond. 4 little ducks go swimming one day, and so on. You've got the idea, I'm sure. And I actually feel like a madwoman singing to my computer here. But anyway, you've got the idea. But the important thing is, the important points I want to make here, is the way that a song like that actually contributes to all aspects of children's development. And let's have a look in a very simple way at what I mean by this. So, for example, children's social development, that children are actually joining in there. They are participating and they're kind of working together to get those movements in time to the music and so on. There is emotional development in the sense of the actual pleasure in participating, that children feel good about themselves and about their learning. We have the psychological development with the way the children relate to the ducks getting lost to their mummy, from their mummy, and of course there is development of empathy there as well. We also have the physical development in terms of the gross motor skills and doing actions in time to the rhythm. We have cognitive development in terms of counting the ducks and, very importantly, associating the numbers with the ducks if perhaps you're holding them up on a sheet. And we also have the creative development if you've got some freedom in acting out the song in your own creative way. And of course, we've got language development there. We have, in particular, the numbers up to 5 and the exposure to natural language that there is in the song. But of course, whether this reaches all aspects of children's development depends on how we do the song in class. The song could actually be just pure focus on numbers and language practice. And I think the point is here that if we do that, we're missing out on an opportunity for all other aspects of children's development and giving them a less enjoyable as well as a less valuable experience. So let's explore the word whole as an acronym of key ingredients for things that we can do to ensure that language learning is integrated with all aspects of children's development. And the first word, the first letter of whole, of course, is W. I wonder if there are any guesses for what W might be in my acronym. If you could put them in the box, if you can think of any. Okay, might be. You got it in one. Fantastic. W is for well-being. Okay, and well-being is a concept that is actually difficult to define. Often well-being is associated, yes, but is equated rather with happiness. But we're not just talking about happiness here, because happiness is a temporary state. And happiness may also refer to something like getting what you want or being spoiled, which isn't necessarily always good for you. So I think well-being is a broader term that encompasses far more than just happiness. It's more to do with having experiences that are meaningful and valuable and expressing a range of emotions that are the appropriate emotions to have in that kind of situation. In the literature, and this is mainly to do with older learners, two kinds of well-being are identified. Subjective well-being, and that is a person's own assessment of how well their life and parts of it are going, measured by things such as life satisfaction and positive and negative emotions. There's also psychological well-being that is identified that relates to people's sense of meaning and purpose and engagement with life and the way this leads to a sense of fulfillment in the longer term. And in some of the work on well-being, 5 aspects are identified, and those are physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. So well-being, in a way, it is a difficult term to pin down, but it means feeling good about yourself and about the world around you. And it means being able to get on with life in a way that you want and feel comfortable with. And I think one way of understanding well-being is to actually look at the behavior of people who have it. And according to some research, intentional activities that have been identified by psychologists that actually increase and maintain people's level of well-being include things such as investing in close relationships, having high levels of gratitude, being helpful and altruistic, having an optimistic outlook, living in the moment, doing exercise, and having a clear sense of purpose. And for anyone who's interested in the research side, I'm drawing there on the work of Sheldon and Bomorski, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right, their work from 2007. So that is a kind of general definition of well-being. And now I'd like you to think about, actually, what does well-being mean for a preschool child? Would you like to, yeah, Sarah Mercer's very good on this, absolutely, yeah. Would you like to just put your ideas in the chat box there? What does well-being mean for a preschool child? What do you think? Feeling safe, absolutely, Helen, again. Feeling safe is so important. Play, Harry, fantastic, of course. Having friends around, lovely. To receive love, yes, to feel cared for, belonging, absolutely. So I think when we bring this concept down to preschool level, we can actually see that well-being includes all these things that I've got up here that I'm not going to read out to you now, but just have a quick look at those. And I think they're covered by the points: freedom from anxiety, socializing, exactly, creatively expressing themselves, all these things I would absolutely agree with, that this is what well-being means for the young child. And of course, who has the key to children's well-being? And I think it's fairly clear that it is parents and carers and children's families who are crucial to children's well-being. But the important thing is that teachers have a significant role to play as well. And to adapt one of my favorite quotes by Veronica Andres, which actually comes from the book on Effect, edited by Jane Arnold, 1999. And she says, parents have the key to children's well-being, but teachers have a spare one. I've slightly adapted the quote there. The original quote is self-esteem, but I actually think that the same thing applies to children's well-being. And of course, self-esteem is an important feature of that. So let's have a look at some examples of ways that we can promote well-being with our preschool children. Okay, and the first one I'd like to start with is building positive relationships. It's not rocket science, but it is so basic and so fundamental. The importance of affect and creating a warm, friendly environment with rapport, showing that you care about children, that you listen with sensitivity and interest, that you model and demonstrate the kind of behavior that you also want the children to use. For example, saying please, thank you, respecting their personal space, using eye contact and smiling. All those things that all of us do and that I know you're all also experts at, but in creating these positive relationships which enable children to stay safe and all the other points that you've been making in the chat box. The next thing, create an inclusive classroom. In other words, where children feel safe, where diversity and difference is valued, where we use inclusive language, let's do this, we're going to do this, where we explain what to do, we demonstrate, we model, we make sure that everyone has access to understanding and getting what is going on, that we model out loud thinking strategies, that we develop a community of inquiry and encourage sustained shared thinking so that everyone can participate. The next point is to do with using learning routines with preschool children that are so important in enabling you to frame your lessons and give to the children the security they need and build their confidence that they know what to do. And learning routines, of course, can cover a whole mass of areas in our teaching. We have opening routines, maybe with a song, singing hello, greeting a puppet. We have closing routines. We have story time routines, calming down routines, tidying up routines, and so on. And these are super important. And at times they may seem a bit boring to you, but they never will be to the children. And in fact, if you miss them out, the children will remind you to do them because it gives them that security that they know what's happening. They feel confident in every aspect of classroom procedures. The next point to do with valuing and fostering children's multilingual identities. I don't know about in your context, but in my context in Spain, we are increasingly working in classrooms where the shared languages among the children are well into double figures. And it is so important to show that you value the children's languages. Children's languages and multilingual identities are not something that they leave at the door when they come into an English lesson, that they bring them with them. And I think there are so many things that we can do to show that we value these. Something that I love doing, for example, introducing vocabulary, is to say, how can we say that in Romanian? How can we say it in Arabic? And the children tell you, and you're the pupil, they're teaching you. And this is fantastic for building up their self-esteem. And also, actually to allow translanguaging and code switching, in other words, for children to move between their different languages, either their mother tongue or the shared language of the classroom, which is often one of their many languages as well. And so, of course, we want to encourage English because we're English teachers, but don't insist and recognize that there are times when the mother tongue or shared language may be better to use. For example, when you're reviewing learning and children don't actually have the language in English yet to express what they want to say. Okay, moving on to actually scaffold language and learning, scaffold supporting, to support children's learning appropriately through visuals, through body language, through mime, through gesture, through using questions effectively, which at this age certainly involves checking what children know, giving them opportunities to demonstrate what they know, but not only this, also including open questions to probe and extend children's thinking. The next point, to give positive praise, positive feedback and encouragement. And at this age, praise has a very important motivational role with children, encouraging them to participate. But of course, we also need to include constructive feedback and descriptive praise, which helps children build up their own self-knowledge and beliefs about what you can do, what they can do. And the last point here about promoting well-being that I've got on the slide here is to include collective and cooperative activities. By collective activities, I mean things like singing and storytelling, where there is a communal focus of the activity and the children are, in Van Leer's terms, intersubjectively engaged. In other words, everybody is focused on the same thing. And cooperative activities, where there are opportunities to bond, to develop relationships, to practice social and language skills in an integrated way. So creating well-being is actually fundamental. And in a way, I think it really should be the goal of preschool education, well, never mind all education, but I'm not talking about that now, rather than academic achievement. And there is research that shows that children's level of well-being is a key factor in how well they do at school. And those of you who are familiar with the research will recognize I'm drawing on the work of Gutmann and Vorhaus, their work in 2012. And there is also research that shows that well-being boosts young children's social and emotional skills and behavior. And that is Durlach and et al., there are about 6 of them, in 2011. And although it's not the subject of this webinar, I think you also need to look at the way your own well-being significantly impacts on children's well-being too. So actually, we need to look after ourselves in order to be able to be most effective in looking after the children. So moving on to our next letter, H, in the word whole. Any guesses for what this is? Any guesses for H? Oh, very good. Health. It could easily be. Yes, absolutely. That's a very good guess. Holistic. Fantastic. Lovely guesses. Okay, well, I'm going to move on because those are fabulous guesses and I could easily have chosen those. In fact, what I've chosen is helpful. I love it. Okay, so H is for head and for heart. So actually, to start off with head, as part of our whole child approach, we also need to include cognitive tasks that develop important thinking skills and pre-academic schools and help to prepare children in readiness for primary school. And the importance of using every opportunity to extend and develop children's thinking. And of course, the development of metacognition is also important, as we'll see a little later. So a couple of examples of head activities. One that will be familiar with some of you, I'm sure, which is using the technique of visible thinking routines, which comes from the Harvard Project Zero, research where they have a flexible, systematic, research-based approach to integrate the development of thinking skills and content across all subject areas. And that this promotes listening skills, it promotes identity, initiative, and a sense of community. So here's a little example here of a See, Think, Wonder activity, which is one of the most applicable, I think, at preschool level. And this is one with my beautiful rainbow photo, okay? And so first of all, we ask children to look at that photo and describe what they can see. So I see, what do you think the children would say? Do you want to just tap it in the chat box? They might say, I see the sky, I see colors, I see clouds, lovely. I see a rainbow, I see colors, I see two rainbows. Okay, and then we move on and we ask them what they think. I think, what might they think? I think, for example, it's beautiful. Or they might think it's scary. The cloud looks quite scary. Or they might think it's amazing, lovely, or sad, or it's rained. Okay, fantastic. And you can field all their ideas in, if you speak the mother tongue or shared language. Okay, and this might then lead in to doing an experiment, a lovely experiment I do. I'm not in a room with a sunny window, but if you have a glass of water and a sunny window, you can make a rainbow on a piece of paper. Children can draw and color a rainbow. They can also sing the rainbow song. You know, that one that goes pink, red, pink and yellow. I can't even remember. All I do remember is that the colors of that song are in the wrong order. So it's a fantastic task to give the children to tell you how the song is wrong. Okay, so another example, I just wanted to focus on the kinds of pre-academic thinking skills that children need. And sorting and categorizing are very central kind of skills that we teach pre-primary school children to do. So in this particular example, after input and learning about food that grows and other food, children might color the circles green of the food that grows. And I think the important thing here is the way that the thinking skills also links to the development of verbal skills and talking about the food, so that we could then color the circles and then we could then say potatoes grow in the garden, peas grow in the garden, and so on. And so actually that gives us a framework for developing both. We might also, at this age, and I wanted to include an example of this because people sometimes think, well, how can we do creative and critical thinking with preschool children? And so I've chosen an example using a traditional story that all of you will know. And in terms of creative thinking, an activity that I like to do is whatever version of the story you use, Goldilocks ends up disappearing out of Baby Bear's life. And so I get the children to draw what happens after the story. And they often draw pictures of Goldilocks coming to Baby Bear's birthday party, or they're meeting up in the forest. They draw pictures to show their ideas. And similarly, even with this story, we can also do a little bit of critical thinking, because actually, is it okay what Goldilocks did? I mean, is it all right to come into someone else's house and try their food and sit on their chair and so on? And why not? So we can already get children to do a little bit of critical thinking there. Okay, the other aspect of H, of course, is to do with heart and to do with your feelings and emotional response to learning, to do with becoming self-aware and learning to recognize and manage your feelings and recognize and respect that others have feelings too. And of course, this relates to the whole area of social and emotional learning. And it's only by understanding your feelings that you learn to manage them. So I think it's really important that we teach children the language of feelings. So, for example, happy, sad, calm, tired, angry. We can talk about feelings. We can use a puppet. How are you today? I'm whatever. We can share our own feelings. You know, I'm tired. Maybe, maybe we can say that, even though I'm very, very happy to see you all. And I think make children aware that it's natural to have a range of feelings. We all do. And I would suggest that you avoid what I call the tyranny of happiness in preschool classes, which are very often trying to insist that all children are relentlessly happy all the time. Life's not like that for them or for you. And of course, activities that you can do on this, just to mention just some very simple ones, the song that I'm sure you know, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And then you can also demonstrate other feelings in a kinesthetic way. If you're angry and you know it, stamp your feet, okay? So we actually convey the body language and feelings of those emotions. Another activity which I actually love to do is based on the work of Virginia Satir, the family therapist. And I don't know if you have read her work, but she says that we all need, adults including, 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 for maintenance, and 12 for growth. And an activity that's lovely to do with preschool children around the circle is pass the hug. And children literally pass the hug round the circle. And there's that little bit of physical contact that they have with each other. And it's really helpful for bonding. They feel bonded and for understanding their emotions. And of course, also to do with feelings is, of course, children get very overexcited. We often need to calm them down. And these days, very often as part of well-being, people talk about mindfulness. I am not a mindfulness practitioner, and I strongly recommend that you don't really do mindfulness unless you are. But I realize that most of us as primary teachers have been practicing a version of mindfulness for years, when we calm our children down. So a little rhyme we might do, and you can just try calming down now in front of your computers. You can all do it with me, and we do this. We do, I breathe in, I breathe out. 1, 2, 3. I close my eyes, I listen. I'm as calm as can be. I breathe in, I breathe out. 1, 2, 3. I open my eyes, I listen. I'm as calm as can be. Okay, so actually a little rhyme there to get children to calm down. And I can feel you all feeling very calm at the end of your computers after that. Okay, so moving on to do also with heart, learning to cooperate, which actually is very challenging at this age because children really do need a lot of patience, persistence, and perseverance in learning to work with others, share with others, recognize that they are not the only ones. Egos rule in preschool. And very often what helps is actually learning to cooperate by doing physical cooperation. So this is like a very simple clapping rhyme. In the traditional one, you've got those peas pudding ones. And we might do one which helps children learn to cooperate. So if you're watching this webinar with a partner, turn to your partner and just clap your hands and we go, let's work together. Let's cooperate. I help you, you help me. It's great. It's great. Let's work together. Let's cooperate. I share with you, you share with me. It's great. It's great. Okay, so actually, as an integral part of the rhyme there, we are actually learning how to cooperate. And of course, we also need to learn to work as a team, and doing projects is often the best way to start this. And I would suggest that actually with preschool, often the best way to start is to get children to do something individually that leads to a cooperative outcome. For example, in a food project, children might individually make food vocabulary that they know for a picnic, for example, out of the Play-Doh or plasticine, and then put their plates of food together. Or they might make a safari park and each make different animals and then put them together. And in that way, we get the individual work and contribution to a collaborative outcome. And we reinforce the message to children that actually we achieve more, our plate of food is much better when we work with others to achieve it. So head and heart come together when we get children working in learning cycles which pull aspects of both these sides, the kind of emotional side and the cognitive side, together. And there are many different learning cycles, and one that I can imagine many of you are familiar with will be the high scope one, which is plan, do, review. And one that I very much like with preschool children is the TASC cycle, Bell Wallace's TASC cycle. And TASC stands for thinking actively in a social context. And what it allows you to include a balance between a focus on whole child development and academic, or English, if you like, in our case, outcomes. The cycle encourages social interaction, critical reflection, and it also gives support for metacognitive thinking with decision-making, evaluation, and review on learning from experience. So let's just think of an example of using it, say with a typical kind of area that you might teach at preschool, which is transport. So they might be learning words such as car, bike, scooter, train, lorry, boat, ship, aeroplane, bus, motorbike, helicopter, or a selection of those. So we would start with, what do I know, at the top right of the wheel there. And so children, what do they know? So cars have 4 wheels, cars go on roads, for example. Then what is the task? Well, the task is to sort the transport on picture cards into groups. So how many ideas do the children have in their groups or at their tables that they can sort the transport? So they're going to come up with things, maybe the number of wheels, where they go, whether they take people or things. So then we're going to decide, or rather they're going to decide, which is the best idea. So maybe they think, let's categorize, they won't think categorize, but let's put the transport in groups of where they go. So then let's do it, okay? So we're down now on the purple one at the bottom left there. So they sort the transport that goes in water, on land, in the air, on railway tracks, okay, according to the criteria that they've decided. How well did I do? This is their self-evaluation, the metacognitive skills, the reflection on their learning. Then a very important stage, let's communicate, let's tell someone. Okay, so for example, cars go on the road, aeroplanes go in the air. Okay, and the final thing, learning from experience. What have I learnt? What have I learnt by doing this? And I would also add there, crucially, to the cycle, how have I learnt it? Okay, so that task cycle gives us a framework for working with children. Of course, what you will have noticed here is that what I haven't been emphasizing as I talk through this is what you would need to do in terms of language preparation. You know, you'd need to do all the flashcard activities, repetition process with the language that the children are using. But I think you can see what a kind of useful tool it would be. Okay, so moving on to O. O stands for, have we got any fantastic guesses here for O? What might O be? Might be, you're very opportunity, lovely. Okay, you're spot on every time, I think, Mike. That's fantastic. Okay, so O is for options and opportunities. Okay, and I think this is really important, that we need to give opportunities for children to contribute in divergent personal ways. For example, in that transport activity that we just talked about, the children might decide to sort those transport pictures by colour, by size, ones they'd like to go on, or ones they have been in. You know, it's up to them. So that divergent personal ways is so important. The next point, to offer opportunities to take risks, to be playful, to be creative. Creative, we saw that little example with the 3 bears story. One thing that I love to do with preschool is to actually set up learning stations every now and again, possibly at the end of units of work in the classroom. And learning stations are in a way similar to English language areas, those of you who've come across that idea, but they take place in the classroom and enable you as the teacher to observe and monitor what's happening. So with a learning station, you might set up, for example, a categorization station where there are flashcards and the children sort them into different groups. We might set up another station where there's the puppet and children play with the puppet and test their friends on vocabulary. And you might just set up 2 learning stations, children do their activity books, and then they have a chance to go to the learning station. So that is an opportunity to be both playful and